I'm going to start with this petal right here. And I'm going to come from my outer edges, applying a generous coat of my red pepper. Now, because we've put our primer coat on, this color won't leave us like the other, like if I had continued to go over and over and over, it continues to die down. Right now, I'm able to apply on a nice generous coat, and I'm using my flat shader, and this is my red pepper. This is our base coat color. There's a huge difference from our first coat of red pepper, how it died down into our fabric and let the dark denim create a lot of the color. Now, this section here is still part of this petal. However, because I don't want to lose that area, I'm going to wipe my brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit, and I'm just doing this with my shader right now. You can do it with your Lunar Blender when we're trying to bring in scratchier highlights. But just on the side of my brush, I picked up the dark so that I don't lose that line. I know where my definitions are. Wipe my brush again, pick up my red pepper, and I'll continue with the rest of the petal. Just that little fold. Now, it's very easy to still do that little fold on our own. However, just so that people who are new at this don't want to feel intimidated, I broke it into 2 parts. So what we're going to do here, I don't want a dark shadow on this side of that fold. I'm going to pick up just a bit of Santa Red by itself on the corner of my brush, and I'm going to blend that along the bottom. So it's a little darker than my red pepper. And I'm going to pick up, I have mixed 2 parts cadmium orange with 1 part red pepper for my highlight. And I'm just going to apply that along there. Now we're going to come back and intensify all of our highlights and our shadings, scratching them in back and forth at the very end. But for now, this is how we go. So I'm going to now take I'm going to pick up my 1/2 inch. I like a 1/2 inch of the Lunar Blender. We're using our brushes dry. I'm going to take a little of the Santa Red, and I'll pull a little Santa Red up. And I like to go on either side of a dent. So do you see this being a dent? That's where my petal curves in and comes towards us. So I'm pulling some red pepper up there, other side of the dent. Same thing here, flip my brush. So we're just streaking that red pepper upwards. I'll wipe my brush off. I can take up a little tiny bit of my dark shading, and whoops, I went right on my flip there, right on my tip. On both sides where our red pepper is, just bring in a bit. So it's not bold. Same thing here. Same thing here. So that's just a little bit. And I'm going to take a little more of that. So do you see I've come with the black mix, our shading mix, just on the tip of my corner of my brush, and I'm just going to streak. So now you can see those streak marks. Oops, I want that, keep that nice and flat for you, coming from underneath. I'm going to clean off my brush and trying to clean it off good without wetting it. Sometimes we have to wet it, but when we do, at least we know we can dry it off good on the paper towel or our towel. I am putting the highlight mix along the outer edge of the petals, and I'm just going to scratch it inwards. Now that's going to definitely be, I want it stronger right where those little flips are, right where that dent is. That would be my strongest part. Put some more up here. Scratch it down. We don't need it to come all the way down. We are wanting this to be a highlight, but I don't want to take over the petal. Nice. And so what I've done here, I had excess on my brush. I wiped my brush off a bit on my toweling so that I'm able to just scratch that paint in that I've applied. And I'm, like I said earlier, we'll go back in later and we will intensify. So you see here, I can put it where I want it to be bold. I've got too much there, so now I can just pull some of that nice and soft. I'm not pressing. Really gently just scratching it in. So in the end, this is how, for now, I can put a bit more here. See how it died down? I pressed a bit hard. Turn it so it comes to the fine point. So this is how we can leave this for now, and then we will move on to the next petal, repeating the same thing all the way along. Now when I go to this petal, you see how we've applied our dark mix when we did our base, our primer coat. Our light's going to come from where it dips in at the very tip, but there'll be dark on either side of that one. He's not going to be as bright by any means because he's tucked in the back. So we'll carry on. Most of them, most petals have one side that's dark, one side that's light. So that's what we're going to do. I'm just going to add a little more light right now on this one, and I know I should be leaving it alone. Leave it alone, Wendy. All right, so that's how we're leaving this one. Okay, I'm ready to carry on with my next petal. I'm applying again my red pepper with a generous coat. We want to make sure that we're not being chintzy with our paint. I'm working with this paint wet on wet, so that's kind of the reason I want to be able to work the colors together. So if we don't put on enough paint to start with, then we're going to be missing out. We want it to stay there and stay wet. Now it's not like I don't apply paint to it when it's dry, because we will be using our colors and coming back in and moving our shading up and pulling our highlights down back and forth while it's dry as well. We're kind of double duty with this paint. So I've applied that. I'm going to again pick up on the side. This is a petal that has dark on both sides. It's tucked in from the back. So I'm applying that dark and just working it out a bit. I'm going to move my brush over, come alongside of a little bit there. And there. Just flipping it, just putting a little bit, and again, it's got a fair bit of dark along this side where it's underneath the petal beside. So just blend that out. Clean my brush off. Now I had wet my lunar blender in between because I waited a little bit before doing this petal. So I am going to take, and I'm drying it off really well. I don't want it to be bleeding. So I'm going to apply my highlight color along the edge. Put it along like here. And I'll just softly scratch it downwards. I'm not pressing too hard. If I press too hard, I don't get that nice scratchy look that I want. We don't want to over blend it. Quite often I pull this down a lot further than I want to, but I'm not concerned because I do pushbacks afterwards with our colors. So that one wasn't too bad. Both petals have dark on the side. There's no flips or folds on this one. So I'm ready to move on to the next petal. And like I said, most of our petals are going to have and you see how I brought this one right up onto the pocket. It's kind of neat. Most of our petals have a side that has the light and the dark. The previous one was both dark. Now, I didn't switch to my flat shader. I've still got my lunar blender in my hand, which we still use quite often for both. It's just that the flat shader does apply more paint for me. It's not scratching it in like this one does, but it's not an issue. Just bring that down. And then here, remember this petal's on top, so we've got quite a bit of our red. Nice, and don't scratch it in. And this is a nice big petal. And I'm coming into where this petal is underneath the other petal. So that's where I'm grabbing my flat. I'm putting my dark shading mix along the edge and work it in. I'm also going to take some of that same mix and I'm going to pull it upwards from the bottom, just to see how I'm just streaking that upwards, not all the way. And then we've got our highlight mix. My highlight mix is going to be along the edge of that petal, which shows that it is on the edge. And I might walk that out a little bit, nice and soft. And I'm just going to come along and strengthen it in the areas that we would like it to really pop. And then I'm going to take my lunar blender. I'm still going to put some of my mix on there too, because I don't want to lose it all. But do you see how I want it uneven? I can pull a little down into there. I'm not intending on it to come all the way down. And I'm just going to fade it over towards where we have the dark on the petal. Now, I've talked a couple times about how I'm going to come in every now and then, and we're going to strengthen these up once they're dried. So we're going to use a little bit of wet on wet. So you can see how that adds our highlight. I'm going to bring a little highlight over on this petal here, just so we can see our edge. There. Same thing over here. It's allowing my dark from underneath to show through. I'll carry on and do the very same thing on the next 2 petals. I'm going to take a rake or comb, whichever you have, and I'm going to apply black fine lines coming out uneven from the center. We'll pull these up. Some will be coming from behind, such as over here. We'll only have just little bits coming from behind. Okay, and just a little bit, I'm knocking into that camera, and again coming out from here. So these are those beautiful markings that we remember seeing on poppies. On the full petals, we'll bring them nice and strong. And on flipped petals, they'll come from behind as well. Okay, so I continue around like that. I'm using my 1/4 lunar blender to base in my center in black. And then I've mixed gray, and I'm going to just dab with the corner of my dirty brush. I picked up some gray. And the one thing about the poppy center is it kind of comes around, pardon me, comes around into almost like a little button to the center. It looks like a little tufted button. And I'm just going to scratch a little highlight around the rest of the edge. We're going to take a liner, and I'm going to pick up some gray and black on my liner brush, and I'll pull a few up to the center coming out. And we end up with these little bits coming across, almost like little, whoops, that one's not a little, that's a bit of a big. When we have a center that has petals in front of it, these will sometimes come up in front. But we're applying these along the outer edges, and I'll pull a few more veins coming out to them. And I'll pull a little highlight on some of these. And I'm still going to give a little highlight to the center of our circle so we can make a little Heidner hair of it. I'm just going to pop up a little more highlight on those center coming up, just a little. Pop through with a few more. Uneven is the big key to all of this. Doesn't look too bad there, so we will consider that our center. Now I'm going to pick up some of our highlight that we had, which was the orange, cadmium orange hue, and the red, poppy red. And I'm going to add a bit more of the cadmium to it, just to brighten it up a bit. And I'm coming in with these just here and there, like on our edges. We're adding popped up highlight trims here and there. It's not everywhere. We're not outlining it. And you can always bring a few fine lines with your liner down as well. But this is going around, adding a couple of highlights. You see the difference that that pop makes in the piece. So we will go along, highlight a few highlights, same way as we're doing right now.